In this video, we'll show you how to replace the thermostat housing on your Ford F-150. This is located on the front of the engine and in your engine bay. Let's get started. We need to remove a bit of the intake piping here. We can use an 8mm. Loosen up the hose clamps. Just loosen those up enough that you can get movement. In order to gain access to our third hose clamp, we can detach both sides of the upper portion of the intake. You want to take that and just rotate it forwards. And that'll give us better access to our third hose clamp. And we can set this off to the side. We have 4 10mm bolts holding the pulley for the water pump on. We're going to go ahead and loosen those up before we remove the serpentine belt. With the vehicle raised and supported, we're working underneath the engine bay now. We have these small tabs. We're going to turn these 90 degrees, and those will drop down. We then have some more clips. We can come along with our pry tool. You can certainly use a flathead screwdriver for this. If you pull out on the panel with the clip can stay in the panel. At this point we have enough space. I'm just going to tuck this back to the side and let it hang. We're going to go ahead and drop the engine splash shield. We can remove the bolts with a 13mm. And we can drop the engine splash shield. Now we'll be using a 15mm to loosen up the tensioner. To do this, we're just going to turn counterclockwise. We can move the belt off of the tensioner. You can let that turn back. We can go ahead and remove our belt. Now we can remove our 4 10mm bolts. And we can remove the pulley. To drain the radiator, we'll loosen the petcock. We can go ahead and close that off. Now we need to remove our intercooler hose that cross over to the driver's side of the vehicle. We just need to remove the lower side on the passenger side. We can do that with an 8mm. Get that moved off of there. To remove our other intercooler pipe on the driver's side of the vehicle, we'll be using a small pick. There's a metal ring. You just need to pick up on that ring. Start moving it outwards from the pipe. You can just move that down onto the intercooler itself and let that rest there, and push up on the intercooler piping. To gain better access, we'll go ahead and remove the oil cap. That way we can remove our engine cover. We'll set that off to the side. And don't forget to put your oil cap back on. Now coming in from the driver's side of the vehicle, we can bring our 8mm around the steering column to loosen the clamp on the hose going to the turbocharger. Now we have a plastic clamp holding that intercooler pipe on. We'll just pull up on that. Pull up on the intercooler hose. We can push that out of the way. Now coming in from the driver's side wheel well, using an 8mm, we can loosen the other hose clamp, holding our other intercooler hose on to the turbocharger. We have one vacuum hose coming to one of our intercooler pipes coming off the driver's side. Press in on the tabs. Push the white connector out. We can pull that off. There's a breather hose running to the valve cover. There's a tab on the back side, so we can rotate that clockwise. And pull up. We can remove our recirc line. We just have a twisting connection. You want to twist that towards the back of the vehicle. We can pull that off. The intercooler pipe is held onto the engine with a grommet down below. So we can just pull up on the pipe. We can go ahead and set this bit of the intercooler piping off to the side. On the front of the thermostat housing, we have an 8mm bolt. We can go ahead and remove that. And we can remove the intercooler clamp with it. In front of our intercooler bracket, we have an electrical connector that is just a rubber grommet. Go ahead and pull that off. We have a vacuum line coming off of our intercooler pipe going to our intake manifold. We need to remove that. We have two white tabs down at the bottom. We can pinch in on those and push up on the white tab. Make sure that's pulled out enough. We can pull that off. Next, we can pull off our electrical connector for our map sensor. Simply press in on the tab. We'll pull that out. You want to make sure you check for any corrosion or damage. Those look good. Using an 8mm socket, we'll loosen the hose clamp. We can work that off. And we can set this off to the side. We can remove our other intercooler hose, and we'll set that off to the side as well. Now we can remove our coolant hoses from the thermostat housing. I'm just going to be using some channel lock pliers. Now working on the driver's side hose. We can use our channel locks. Work the clamp down far enough so you can rotate the hose off of the thermostat housing. We also need to remove the hose going to our coolant reservoir. Now we can remove our 4 8mm bolts holding the thermostat housing to the water pump. We can go ahead and pull out on the thermostat housing. We'll release it off the water pump. And then we have a tube on the back of the thermostat housing. We need to separate that from the thermostat housing. We have an O-ring on the back side of the thermostat housing. I'm going to use a little bit of brake clean on a rag just to clean up the surface. And go ahead and clean up in where the gasket goes. Now we can go ahead and install the gasket. We want to work this down, make sure it's nice and even and set all the way down. We can install our thermostat housing. We have the pipe going through the center of the engine. You want to work the thermostat housing over that first. Make sure it's fully seated on the pipe. Now we can install our bolts. Now we can snug those down. Now we can torque these to 71 inch-pounds in the sequence shown. Now we need to turn these an additional 45 degrees. Now we can go ahead and reinstall our coolant hoses. We can plug the sensor in from the front of the engine. And we can go ahead and install our water pump pulley. We can go ahead and snug those down. Now we can install our serpentine belt. We can torque the water pump pulley bolts to 18 foot-pounds. Now we can install our intercooler piping. We can go ahead and hook up our breather line. Push that down and make sure it won't pull back off. And reinstall the breather line onto our first bit of intercooler here. Snap down the connection and make sure it won't pull off. Now we can go ahead and tighten down the hose clamps to the turbo. Coming down underneath the intake box, we have the recirculation line that goes to the intake. We're just going to push that on, make sure it's fully seated, and it's not going to pull back out. Now we can install the intercooler hose that goes to the throttle body. We can get our map sensor plugged back in. And we can get our breather hose line on. Make sure you push down the white tab and make sure it's fully seated. Now we can go ahead and tighten down the clamp for the throttle body. Now we can reinstall the clamp off the front of the engine holding the intercooler pipe. We can go ahead and close the clamp. We can go ahead and reinstall the upper portion of our intake. And we can tighten those clamps down. To install our engine cover, we'll remove the oil cap. There's two tabs on the back side of the engine. Simply line those up. Make sure your oil fill neck is lined up. And reinstall your oil cap. Now with the vehicle raised and supported, we can go ahead and reinstall our intercooler piping. Slide the passenger side on and tighten down the clamp. Now we can set down the driver's side hose. Once you have that set down, go ahead and place your spring back in its groove. Work it around the backside until the ring is set. Now we can reinstall our splash shield. Now we can snug those down. Now we can go ahead and reinstall our radiator shroud. Simply push all of our little tree clips back up into their place. And then turn each of our 90-degree connectors. Now we can go ahead and fill the system with your manufacturer specified coolant. Don't forget to put your radiator cap back on. Start up the engine and let it run until it's up to full operating temperature. Let the fans come on 2 or 3 times. Watch the air leaving the system. Once there's no more air bubbles leaving the coolant, you're all set.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.